Hey, sports fans, it's world champion handicapper Mike North. Punch this number in your phone right now. If you're driving, pull over. 1-800-808-3419, 1-800-808-3419 for a free pick and info for the premier handicapping site in the country, VegasScoresAndOdds.com. It's the only site you'll ever need with expert handicappers like John Anthony, Denny Macklin, Tony Sacco, Ray Monahan, yours truly, and many more. Check out the homepage of VegasScoresAndOdds.com for a tote board with your buddy. Follow Vegas Scores and Odds on Twitter and dial up 1-800-808-3419. It's 1-800-808-3419, 1-800-808-3419, or go to VegasScoresAndOdds.com.
The following program is distributed by the Bears Barroom Radio Network. It's presented live over MixLR.com and later disseminated in podcast format on most delivery platforms. It's intended for all audiences. Never before in the history of sports podcast has one show made this promise. Draft on Tap will report on every college prospect pro scouts are looking at for the 2020 NFL Draft. Every one of them.
Sanders, smothered. Chase Young, another big play.
Montez second and goal. Steps in. Caught. Touchdown. The third passing touchdown of the first half for Steven Montez. There's Johnson. He's got it. Touchdown, Texas. An open man at the 25. A foot race for the tight end. There's that man again. Albert O with his second score. 47 yards.
Draft on Tap with Bears Barroom draft analyst Denny Shimon. Your host, Ryan Badgley. And featuring some of the most respected draft analysts in the country. Grab a beer. We're about to make history.
And making history is what we do on Bears Barroom Radio Network. I'm your host, Ryan Badgley, and welcome to Draft on Tap. We have an exciting show planned and a new segment called Scouts Corner for you tonight, and we'll also be welcoming in Matt Lowe from Lindys Sports Mag. We're going to be talking the combine, the draft, and everything under the sun. So let's get the show started by introducing our Bears Barroom draft analyst, Mr. Danny Shimon. Danny, how you doing tonight, brother?
Hey, Ryan. How are you, buddy? I'm doing great. Excited. Like I said, we have another jam-packed show for everyone tonight. Excited to have Matt Lowe from Lindys Sports on. The guy knows the SEC conference inside out. Not only that, but he covers college football like a blanket. We're going to be, like I said, we're talking about the draft, the combine, anything college football related. And then we got this new segment, like you said, we're called Scouts Corner, where I let our listeners tell me who they want me to scout. So basically what you got to do is during the week, on Twitter, let me know through my personal Twitter account, which is dshimon56, at dshimon56, or through the Draft on Tap Twitter account, which is at drafttap. And just let me know who you guys want. It could be big name prospects. It can be small school prospects. If I can get tape on them, I'll go ahead and do a quick, 30 to 45 second breakdown of the prospect. So that way you guys can be more aware of all these guys that are going to be available for the Bears to draft and other teams to draft come April.
Yeah, I'm excited about this segment, Danny. We've got, you've been putting in a lot of work here, scouting prospects. And, before we get into things, I got to tell you about my night last night. So my daughter's volleyball team, right?
All right.
Yeah. Cool. So they played a Section 3 semifinal, Class B semifinal game here. I live in the state of New York. And they played a tough team in Canastota and beat them 3-0, and now advance to the Class B championship on Saturday at 5 o'clock. Now, the catch, my daughter leaves for Costa Rica tomorrow morning at 6:45 and will miss the championship game. And will leave it to her teammates to win that sectional title for her.
Wow. Is she the only teammate that's going to be missing the game?
She is.
That's going to be tough.
Yep. There was almost another girl who had agreed to go and then changed her mind. and so it's just her. But this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for her, and I know she's going to have a blast, learning a lot and going with the school down to Costa Rica on her trip, and she is going to have a blast. But a great game nonetheless. She played her butt off all season long. She learned a lot, and I know she'll be rooting her teammates on while she's down in Costa Rica.
That's awesome. I mean, it's awesome that they made the championship game, and it's just it's an awesome trip coming up, and it's just one of those things where you're like, what do I do? And I know these trips are booked ahead of time, so it's not like she knew this was going to happen. And
sure.
So
and that was the thing is she had to get approval from 2 teachers. Well, her coach is one of the teachers, and her coach last year at this time, when they had to get approval, gave approval. And how could you predict that you would be playing this weekend in, a championship game? And, the coach made the comment to us last night saying, I'm the one that signed for her to go. So, but totally excited. I will be going to cheer on her team and sending her some live updates and whatnot. And hopefully we're walking out of there with a sectional championship. Now, the funny part is, Danny, and I know I've said this before, is their team is playing my old high school. And it's a huge rivalry, probably one of the biggest in our area, and we're really excited for it. So really excited, for that game Saturday, and I know how excited she is for her teammates, to bring them on. So
she's leaving tomorrow, right, for Costa Rica?
Yeah, she leaves tomorrow morning. So
just in nick of time, because
right,
I think the bitter cold's coming your way, isn't it?
Yeah, so we've got a high of -3 tomorrow. So she's getting out while the getting's good. So they'll leave early in the morning, and they'll arrive in Costa Rica, sometime at night, and get all settled in, and then they'll start their trip off the next day. They've got some great excursions planned and whatnot. So she's super excited, and we're excited for this opportunity for her.
Yeah, it sounds like it's gonna be a tremendous opportunity and a lot of fun for her. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. It's it's awesome. We're very proud of her, and welcome to everybody that has joined us in the chat. And we're going to be bringing in Matt Lowe from Lindys Sports Mag here in just a bit. But Danny, I know you touched on Scout's Corner as we started the show. Where did this come to mind? I know we talked about it in our Slack. What prompted this from you to bring in something like this to try to get the fans involved?
Well, a lot of times I get hit up on Twitter asking about different prospects in terms of what my thoughts are, on a particular player, and I figure what a good way to get our followers and our listeners to be interactive with us on the show. Besides on the chat there, they can just hit us up on Twitter and say, hey, I want you to scout this guy, and I want you to scout this guy. And then for the first week, the participation was terrific. Got over 8 players, and almost 9. I think it was 9 players actually. So going ahead and start breaking on some tape. And we'll try some of these guys that you guys are asking about, on the show, hopefully, as we get closer and closer to the draft here. But so I just wanted to get more participation from our followers, and I think this is a great way to kind of keep them informed and also keep them as a part of the show. And I think it was just so whatever if it's a small school Division III player, Division II, whatever, just as long as I can get tape on the guy, I'll go ahead and give you, like I said, a 30 to 45 second breakdown, and I just I feel it was a fun way to keep everybody informed and keep, like I said, everybody part of the show.
Yeah, I think it was a great idea to really keep it kind of interactive, just an awesome way to really draw attention, because, there are guys that we may not have touched on, or that weren't part of the Senior Bowl or the East-West Shrine game, or didn't get a combine invite, that teams could be looking at and talking about that. I'd find it hard at this point to say they weren't on our radar, but maybe it's somebody that wasn't, a high profile prospect that, people are really looking at this point. And that's kind of why, Danny's here. That's to really find these types of players that really could make an impact on the Chicago Bears roster. So I know we've got quite a few of them. Off the top of your head, Danny, while we have a few minutes before we bring Matt on, is there anybody that since the beginning of this season who was an underdog, somebody you probably weren't even really thinking of, that really jumped out at you, not only as the season wore on, but as, the East-West Shrine game, Senior Bowl, or maybe they didn't play in any of those, that's out there that you've really got an eye on?
Well, in terms of, and again, I'm keeping it in terms of what I see as the needs for the Bears. Offensive line, we've discussed this before, offensive line, tight end, edge rusher, corner, so on and so forth. So, some of the guys that really have grown on me as the season has progressed, we've talked about them, in numerous times on numerous shows, is quarterback Anthony Gordon from Washington State.
Sure.
In terms of, running back Edwards-Hilare from LSU has really, to me, demonstrated an ability, I think, to be a very big-time contributor at the next level at the NFL. In terms of, edge rusher, I'm still going through some of these guys, but, a guy like Kenny Willekes from Michigan State, I loved his motor coming into the season, and I think he, just continued to prove that. Now, some of his measurables did not come in as expected at the Senior Bowl, but you know what? That didn't stop him in terms of going out there and wreaking havoc throughout the week at the Senior Bowl. So, I love that kid's motor. I love the way he plays the game. The guy we talked to down in Mobile, Juaun Jennings, a guy who really impressed both of us in terms of his outgoing personality, not only, what he does on the field with his ability, to make the catch, those difficult catches, but, outgoing personality, a guy who's willing to, open up to the media and just kind of show himself. So I really, took a liking to him, especially. There's a ton of kids. This Trotman kid from Dane we had not heard of until we had Jim Nagy on the show, and he kind of told us about him, and then I started digging into him. And this guy has a skill set that projects nicely at the next level. Bryson Hopkins, is a kid, a tight end that I'm very fond of. A guy that I know Berlissimo had on his show, did a great job with an interview with Bryson Hopkins. So, guys like that have really come on and impressed me. And a guy that, I got to, hit on for this week's Scouts Corner and Troy Pride Jr. from Notre Dame, a kid that I really preseason, looking at his tape, if you look at his stats, it doesn't really pop out at you. But if you look at his body of work in terms of his film, the athletic ability he provides, he's a guy that made my top 10 corner list, and went down in Mobile and really, in my opinion, showed out and showed to NFL scouts that not only could he be an inside corner as a slot, but also can match up with some of the big guys on the outside. So Troy Pride Jr. has really done a great job as well, and we'll get into a number of these guys as we get along. But just to name a few off the top of my head, those are some of the guys that really have caught my eye this season.
It's funny, that not only that you mentioned Troy Pride Jr., and he's somebody that we may get into as time allows later, but he was one of the guys that I thought while we were down in Mobile, when I saw game film of him during the season, I wasn't sure of, but he really cemented himself as the practice went on, and then seeing him in the game, I thought he really did a nice job down there, and I think he really did a nice job and drew some positive attention for himself, Danny.
Yeah, I think like I said, we'll get into him possibly later on in the show. And he's one of the guys that was suggested to me in Scouts Corner. But he came in, his measurables came in nicely. He's a fast kid. He's got that speed that they look for in the outside corner position. So, and he's athletic. He's a guy that can hang with receivers. So these athletic freaks on the outside. So I think a lot of positives came up with Troy Pride Jr., especially down in Mobile. So.
Yeah, and we've just been joined by Matt Lowe. Matt, it's Ryan Badgley from Draft on Tap. How you doing?
I'm doing great, man. Good to talk with you.
Yeah, good to talk with you, bud. I've also got our Bears Barroom draft analyst, Danny Shimon, on the line. Danny, say hi to Matt.
Hey, Matt. What's up, bud? How are you?
What's up, Danny? Good to talk with you again, man.
I appreciate you giving us some time tonight. We really, when we look for SEC coverage, right? The best conference in college football. You're our guy to go to, Matt. And I know you do a great job of covering the entire college football landscape, but I know SEC is something that you cover like a blanket, and we wanted to get in, with you tonight and talk about, some of these prospects that are coming out in the SEC, and also maybe preview a little bit of the combine coming out. So, but I understand you've been busy this week, huh?
Well, yeah, we did our NFL draft preview. We wrapped that up last week. We got 2 Super Bowl editions ready for the winter. We did a Kobe Bryant tribute special. Roland Lasby, a guy who's written a book on Kobe, he actually kind of spearheaded that, but I did a lot of the editing on that. So yeah, man, we've done about 10 magazines in the past 7 weeks. So we've been pretty busy.
Wow. Well, let's dive right into this thing here. So, looking at going through and creating, these top 10 lists and going through some of these mock drafts and all this stuff. And there's a couple of players, or actually there's a lot of players I want to go over with you, but I only have a certain amount of time. But, like the one guy that really, I think Ryan and I were just talking about guys that really impressed me this season. A guy who's really done a great job, I think is Juaun Jennings from South Carolina. When I looked at his 2018 tape, it was, he's got the size, he's got the athletic ability, but you know what? It's just like there was something missing from me from watching his last tape from last year. However, you put on this season's tape, and the kid's just a monster. Now stat wise, it doesn't explode off the stat sheet for you, but the guy's a presence in the middle. The guy dominated offensive linemen in the SEC. So, your take on Kinlaw. You think, because it was a senior year and he was going auditioning for the NFL, you think that's what his motivation was, or you think he just finally, the light just clicked on and he's now becoming that football player that many had predicted when he came out of high school?
Well, I think it was more of the latter. The light kind of came on for him, and you look how South Carolina upset Georgia. He was in Georgia's backfield all game long. Yep. I mean, that was a pretty good offensive line that he was playing against, and he did the same against Alabama. He picked the center of the guard up one time and just pretty much shoved him back to the quarterback and had a sack in that game as well. But yeah, big physical guy. I think he was at the Senior Bowl, but he didn't participate. But I mean, if the scouts get to see him in person, they know he's a big boy. And when you have those types of guys in the interior right there, that's where it starts. If you can stop the run, and especially if you got a guy that can rush the passer and push the pocket back right there, right close to the quarterback, then that's a key thing, and he's going to be a hot commodity. I could probably see him going off the board anywhere between 10 and 16 right through there. But yeah, I think he's definitely an impact player, and he's a big boy too.
Ryan, did you have a question?
Yeah, Matt, one of the guys that stood out to us at the Senior Bowl, and we were able to have a little chat with him personally, was Juaun Jennings. And, watching him in practice, Danny got to see him most of the week. I got to see him the one day. And then in the game, had a couple drops in the game, but then had a really nice touchdown grab. But in practice, he was just phenomenal. Just your thoughts on him and his season, and where do you see somebody like him fitting in this draft?
Well, I tell you what, guys, doing the draft book last year and seeing all the intel, this wide receiver class is loaded, and you should be able to get a really good player, into the middle rounds in this draft. I mean, Juan's a guy that I think he was a pretty highly rated guy coming out of high school, and he's a big kid. He's got all the measurables. The thing that, with him, too, is Tennessee's quarterback play just wasn't that good, until, it kind of stabilized this past season. But, I mean, when you don't have a quarterback and offensive line and all that working together to get the ball down the field and move the ball, then it makes it tougher on the skill guys,
Sure.
And I think he could be a product of, not having that big-time offense. So I think he could be a sleeper player. I mean, if you guys saw him up close, y'all know he's a big kid, and he can run, and he can make the big-time catch. So I think he could be a steal for somebody in the middle rounds.
Yeah, I love Jennings. I love his physicality at the catch point. I mean, this guy's got defensive backs draped all over him, but his guy goes up there and makes a nice catch, and it doesn't bother him. So that's one thing. My comp for him, Matt, I don't know if you agree, is like a Brandon Marshall type. A guy that won't necessarily beat you with his speed, but has got that physicality at the point of at the catch point where he can just go up and get the ball away from a defender.
Yeah, guys, and I mean, now more so than ever, the 50-50 ball is such a huge part of our game. With football, and you don't have to run the 4-3-40. If you can jump up over somebody, and catch the ball, then that's what it's about. And I mean, you kind of look at if you got 4 or 5 guys on the field at one time, there's only so many good cornerbacks on certain teams. There's only a certain amount of guys that can cover. It's very rare that you're going to have a team in college or the pros that can cover 4 or 5 guys and cover them like a blanket. So there's always that mismatch there. And if you got a guy with size that can go up and catch the ball, that's a definitely an advantage for an offense.
Yeah, and piggybacking to another Tennessee Volunteer, here in Chicago, the Bears are looking for an edge rusher, a guy to go opposite of Khalil Mack. And a kid that I need to do some more film work on and really kind of intrigued me down in Mobile is Darrell Taylor from Tennessee. 6'4", 259 pounds, 33-inch arms. The kid when you put on his tape, he flies all over the field. So give us some more info on Darrell Taylor from Tennessee.
Well, I mean, he's a quick guy off the edge. He can bend, and he had a knack for forcing fumbles in college. And again, it goes back to the Tennessee team and some of their prospects, just because they weren't that good of a team. I just don't know how much people know about them. But I do know he's an impact player. And like I said, he made big plays for him, as far as sacks and forcing fumbles. Probably needs to get a little bit more consistent. But, I mean, over the last 2 years, he was one of the SEC's best pass rushers. And when you think about, other guys on Tennessee's defenses that offenses had to be, to target, to kind of take out, he was one of the main guys, and he still was productive. So I think that, when a guy is targeted by an offense, either double team or to go away from, and he's still a really productive player, I think that's when you got a pretty good player.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, and clearly that was the case for him. Matt, I kind of want to spin it now to the quarterback from Georgia, Jake Fromm. Being that we are a Bears podcast, we as Bears fans are, I should say a Bears podcast network. We're looking obviously at quarterback this season. And Fromm has been somebody that a lot of Bears fans have been talking about on Twitter. Is this a guy that could be sitting in round 2 and that the Bears could possibly grab with one of their second-round picks?
I think that might be a little. The Bears have two second-round picks, correct? Aren't they pretty close together?
Yeah, within 7 spots of each other. Yeah.
I don't see them reaching for a quarterback that high.
Okay.
Just because I think the Bears need to some work done on their offensive line. I mean, they need to build because I think they got a good young running back. I just think they need to get some guys that can move the pile on the offensive line, and I think Chicago is, they still got a pretty good defensive unit, but their offense needs to help that side of the ball out by controlling the clock a little more, and so I mean I can see. I don't think Fromm will go in the second round. I think he'll probably be more of a third round guy. I mean, I don't know for sure. Who knows?
Okay,
but,
sure.
I think you could get. I think you could look at getting it. I mean, I like Nate Stanley from Iowa. I mean, watching him play. I mean, I think he's a guy that can hurt you with his feet. He's a big kid, and he's got the size you look for. And I mean, I just think when you look at the Bears, though, I don't see them going that high for a quarterback, but I do see them addressing their offensive line, and I think they could use another explosive guy at receiver.
Yeah, going off of Fromm, I'm curious, Matt, do you think it's the size that you're kind of, liking him in the third round and not in the second round range? What is it about Fromm that has you maybe not souring on him, but, not as high as others?
I don't know. I just, to be honest with you, I just think this is a really good draft, and there's a lot of good players, and especially at the skill positions. And I think that this is a good draft for offensive tackles, and I think it's a good draft for corners and safeties. So I'm not so sure he'll go that high. But I do think Jake Fromm can play. I mean, you go back 2 years ago, in the SEC championship game against Alabama, and that guy, he had probably his best game as a collegiate in that game. And, he was making some throws that were unbelievable. This past year, I mean, they didn't return any of their top 6 pass catchers, and I think that was a reason why he kind of took a step back a little bit. I mean, because when you come out of, high school and then you enter the SEC and you're going up against corners for Auburn and LSU and Florida, and I mean, it's a different step up, man. I mean, that's a different ball game, so I think that was a big part of why he took a step back this past year, and he lost his offensive coordinator, so it was a kind of a new connection there. But I do think Jake Fromm can play, and I think if he gets in the right system and they develop him properly, I think he can be a pretty good pro.
Yeah, I agree with that. I love the fact that he played in that pro-style system in Georgia, where he's got some pro concepts already under his belt. So I think his transition might be easier coming into the NFL. But you mentioned this is a deep draft, and I agree with you that the skill position, the receivers are pretty stacked this year. You just mentioned corners and safeties. I'm surprised by the fact that in some of these mock drafts, and again, they're just mock drafts. They're not they're not written in stone here, but LSU safety Grant Delpit, for me, he's my top safety in this draft coming into this process, and I see him dropping like in the lower half of the first round. And I know he didn't have a great season, but he's still one of the leaders on that team, and had a pretty solid season in my opinion. So, do you think he could fall as far as that 43 area range for the Bears? I mean, he would look terrific next to Eddie Jackson in that Bear secondary.
Yeah, I don't see him falling that far, because he's a guy that in today's NFL is really, really valuable. I mean, just because he'll come up and hit you, he can cover. He's a savvy player. He's an instinctive player. He usually finds the ball. I think he was a little nicked up this past year, and let's face it, guys, LSU didn't need their defense a whole lot. I mean, did they? I mean, because they were scoring 50 points a game. Half their games were over by halftime. But he's a very valuable guy. He had a good game in the national championship game against Clemson. So I think I don't see him going further than the 15th pick or somewhere around the mid first round. I mean, I just think he's too valuable of a player. And kind of like when you look at Isaiah Simmons from Clemson, a guy that can, in the national championship game, he was out covering running backs and receivers. This guy's a 6'4", 230-pound, guy that can play in the box, that can cover a receiver, cover a running back. Those types of guys are really, really valuable, and like him and Delpit. So it'll be interesting to see where they go, but I think they'll go pretty high in the first round, both of those guys.
Sticking with the Tigers, Matt, Clyde Edwards-Hilare, running back, kid burst on the scene, phenomenal back, enters the draft, one of 7 LSU prospects this year, obviously. Where do you see him fitting in this draft? Is he a first-round talent, or is he somebody that, you could see, later on in the draft, being that, the running back position is just so talented?
Well, I think, last year, for a couple of years there, the running back position didn't seem to be really valued a lot by NFL executives, but you look at what Derrick Henry did, you look at the Chiefs running game in the Super Bowl, you look at the Niners. Look, man, football is football. You have to be able to run the football to win championships. But Clyde Edwards, I remember talking to Danny about him in the season, and this guy, man, he is a little bowling ball. I mean, he catches it and he runs hard. I mean, a guy that was an underdog, so he's going to come in and work hard. He's just a short, squatty guy, and those backs catching the ball out of the backfield now in the NFL are huge. So I think he'll go early to mid second round. Okay. Just because I just think there's so many good players ahead of him, but I do think he can be, to be honest with you guys, I think the first 4 backs in this draft, and we got him ranked J.K. Dobbins 1, DeAndre Swift 2, Jonathan Taylor from Wisconsin, who seems like nobody really talks about, but that dude's
right. I agree.
I mean, that guy is a stud, man. And Clyde Edwards-Hilare, I think all 4 of those guys could make a Pro Bowl or two in their career. I mean, at least. I think they could be Pro Bowl players, all four.
Sure.
Yeah, with Edwards-Hilare, and my comp for him, Matt, I don't know if you agree, is Mark Ingram. Maybe an even quicker version of Mark Ingram. You know, the squatty power guy. But Hilaire's feet and his pass catching ability are something that surprised me. As the season progressed this year.
Yeah, I mean, and how many times did you see him break a tackle?
Yep.
You know, those guys that are short and squatty like that, they're just so hard to tackle because they're so much lower than, their center of gravity is just lower, and you get that momentum. I mean, he broke that one tackle in the Clemson game, and I mean, it was a tremendous run. I mean, so he's one of my favorite players, to be honest with you. And if my Falcons can pick him up, I'd love it.
There he is. There's his pick. Sticking with the quarterback, or going back to the quarterback, I should say. So that two-front question here. So I know beginning of the season you and I talked, and on the show, and we talked about kind of previewing the quarterbacks, and we talked about Tua being probably the best quarterback of the bunch. Did you see this Joe Burrow explosion coming? And then if not, and so the other part of the question is how is Tua? Have you heard about the latest in terms? I know that the latest report was that fact that everything expects to be a-okay in terms of that hip. But in terms of have you heard anything about Tua being able to perform at the combine?
I haven't heard that. I know I heard he's progressing nicely, and okay. I think the thing about Tua is people know. I think the scouts know what Tua can do. I don't think they have to look at him, with no pads on, throwing drills. I mean, the kid all you have to do is watch the tape and see how accurate he is. I mean, and the moxie that he has. But when he is full throttle, and if say he has a private workout in Tuscaloosa and throws around, I think it'll draw a lot of interest. And, everybody's got him pretty much penciled in for Miami. But I wouldn't be surprised if somebody tries to trade up and get him. But I could see the Detroit Lions taking him at 3. Right. I mean, with the uncertainty there with Stafford.
I saw a report say that. Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I'm saying I saw a report say that Stafford is now possibly being shopped for a trade.
Yeah, and I don't know if they would do that. I could see. I mean, of course, you don't want 2 quarterbacks on your roster that cost a lot of money, when you have other holes to fill. But I could see them. I mean, is he that good to pass up? I mean, it's almost like a couple of years ago when all these teams passed on Deshaun Watson. I was like, man, are you guys watching? Would y'all watch the same games that I did? I mean, I don't know. I don't know if Mitchell Trubisky is better than Deshaun Watson.
That's a sore spot here, man. I wanted Watson so bad for the Bears.
But, dude, me too. You're digging that knife in.
I mean, and to be honest with you guys, when we made our book that year, I stone cold argued with our draft. I was like, what? Look, man, this ain't nothing against Mitchell. He's a good player, but this kid, we saw what he did against a bunch of NFL players in the national championship. I mean, and yep. But I don't know. So that's the thing. I mean, do you pass on a franchise quarterback? Although you're okay at quarterback, there with Stafford, but do you pass on a potential franchise quarterback? And that's a big question to ask.
And he's somebody who, too, that, I mean, he missed a majority of last season with a back injury. So, I would assume at this point he may be somewhat healthy. But, let's say you do bring in a Tua, there's no guarantee that Tua is going to be ready to play by the time the season starts. So it could be something where they keep Stafford around, have Tua for the year, and then maybe they depart with Stafford after next season. But, I mean, that's throwing out hypotheticals to a degree, I guess. But, my question for you, Matt, is I see on Twitter all the time a lot of folks, saying I'm, talking to this source and that source and seeing, oh, this team's going to trade up to try to get this player and this player. As somebody who really, pays close attention to the draft, how much of this that these people are putting out on Twitter is a real possibility?
Well, I mean, it is Twitter, you know. I mean, but
right.
Guys, does the draft ever go the way it's supposed to go?
Good point.
No, it never does. I mean, there have been times where I'm watching the draft because I'm a draft dick. I've watched it every year since I was a kid. I usually take the next day, it's on Saturday, but sometimes I'll take the day off if it's been on Friday, and I'll get ready and, you know, get my fire going and watch the draft. But yeah, you never do know what teams are thinking, you know, and you never know, you know, who's going to take this person at this spot. But I tell you, man, it's one of those things where if you miss on players and you're picking in the top 10, it can set your franchise back, you know, years, and especially if you miss on quarterbacks. You know, that's and guys, it's a hard position to evaluate and to hit on, but you know, I always look at it. What does the guy do when in money spots? You know, what does the player do when the spotlight's the brightest? Does he perform or does he not? You know, and that's the big kicker with me, man. I mean, I want to see you perform when the money's on the line.
Exactly. So just Matt, before we let you go, and we appreciate your time tonight. How fun is it going to be next year covering the SEC with Lane Kiffin coaching Mississippi and Mike Leach coaching Mississippi State?
Well, I can tell you. I mean, it's SEC Media Days is going to be pretty crazy. But you know, I mean, man, the league just went from real hard to real hard. You know, because Leach is one of those coaches. You know, and his system, it can be a matchup nightmare for somebody. Right. You know, just because how much they throw the ball around. And Lane Kiffin, I mean, he's one of the brighter offensive minds in college football. And, you know, it's going to be real fun. I mean, and, you know, we'll see what happens. You know, will they have success? I mean, I don't know. This is a hard league, you know, and, you know, you got to play a little defense too in the SEC, you know. And I was going to tell you guys, the Florida Atlantic tight end, Harrison Bryant.
Yep.
He's
my leader. Yep.
He's a guy that could be a sleeper type young potential Pro Bowl player. I mean, you're talking about a guy that can run. He's a pretty good blocker. He led the nation in receiving and receptions and yards by a tight end. Knows a pro style offense. So I think he could be a player that could help somebody out pretty quick.
Yeah, he really stood out, Matt, down in Mobile with his ability to block. I mean, he surprised me because that was one of my knocks on him was blocking. Like, he's an effort blocker, but he wasn't really one of those guys that I feel confident lining up at the Y or in line. But I mean, he did a solid job down in Mobile, and he was, you know, planting his hands in the defender's chest and knocking them back. So I think he really impressed some scouts down there in terms of his blocking ability.
Yeah, and there's another one. What's Troutman? Isn't he from
Dayton. Yep, Division II.
He's another guy that I think a lot of people are high on. But the FAU kid, I mean, because here's the thing too in the NFL now, you know, with it being more of a passing league, you know, if you got that tight end that you can keep on the field and be a major weapon in the passing game and also double as a good blocker, a la George Kittle. Those guys are valuable. Those guys are really valuable. And so, you know, I think more and more the value of those guys is going to keep going up.
Exactly.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Ryan.
No, I was just going to say that I totally agree with Matt. I mean, and another one of those guys is Bryson Hopkins. You know, Danny, we not only had the privilege of speaking with him, but, you know, he was on one of our shows just earlier this week, and he's a guy I know lots of Bears fans are really chomping at the bit for with one of those first two picks in the second round.
Yeah, I mean, y'all could use a guy like that's big and fast and can get open in the middle of the field. And I tell you what, I didn't understand the use of Tariq Cohen this year with Chicago. I didn't understand. I mean, that guy's one of the big play threats in the league, and I mean, what happened?
It just seemed like the whole offensive unit was just discombobulated this year. I mean, play calling was off, and then, the offensive line was really poor this year in terms of some of their efforts, some of the run blocks. And I think Cohen here over the years has displayed, in terms of his ability. I think he's a better pass catcher sometimes than a running back, at least from what we've seen here. So I think, but again, like to your point, I think they could have utilized his strengths better. And I think that's one of the knocks that Matt Nagy has been getting here in Chicago is, play or, coach your players to their strengths and not try to, fit them in a system, that you design or something like that. So, yeah, Cohen is one of those players that a lot of people here in Chicago are asking, what happened to him.
My biggest thing with Cohen, guys, was, I mean, they're sending him out on a corner route. He's 5'7", and he's got a 6'2" corner going. He's not going to win that matchup. I mean? It's like, what are you doing?
I mean, dump the ball out there like a little angle route.
Yes.
Maybe get the ball to him and let him go. I mean, 2 years ago, because when Chicago beat Atlanta 2 years ago, I think y'all beat Atlanta. I'm not sure. I can't remember, but he ran through our defense like, a knife through hot butter, man. I mean, and I was like, who is this cat? And getting the ball out of the backfield and let him go.
So I was at that game, Matt. It was the home opener in 2017 after you guys came off the Super Bowl. And you did beat us. We had a chance to win the game as there was about 7 seconds left, but Mike Glennon was our quarterback, so I don't think I need to say anymore.
I've eliminated that game from my mind because of Mike Glennon. But just real quick, man. I'm sorry, just real quick, going back to Mike Leach. KJ Costello transfers over from Stanford to Mississippi State. How do you like that marriage there between Mike Leach and Costello?
Could be good. Mississippi State, I can't remember the kid. They got a freshman down there and played pretty good last year. I can't remember his name right now. Schaefer might be it. But I mean, I don't know. Like I said, he could be okay. Mississippi State, they got an offensive line problem too, so he'll have to fix that pretty quickly. But it could be good. I'm not sure. I don't really know a whole lot about Costello. I think he's been pretty banged up the last couple of years. But I mean, could be good, could be bad. I don't know.
Well, Matt, we want to thank you for your time tonight, bud. We've had you on for 30 minutes, and we can't thank you enough for staying on that long. We always ask our guests, as go ahead and, give out the Twitter handle, website, whatever you got going on, free promotion time, and we'll let you go after that. We just can't thank you enough.
Well, hey, man, I always appreciate coming on here, and it's always a pleasure. And you can find me on Twitter at MattLowe777. I also write for LindysSports.com. Of course, I write for all of our magazines. We got a Chiefs Super Bowl special, our NFL Draft magazine, our MLB and fantasy baseball previews, and Roto World from NBC. They also do a fantasy baseball preview with us, and those are all on our website. You can go to LindysSports.com, click on Shop. Of course, we got the Forever Mamba tribute to Kobe Bryant in there, too. But once again, guys, always a pleasure, and I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, thanks so much, Matt. We hope you have a great rest of your night, man, and we thank you for joining us again, bud. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, Matt.
All right. Hey, take care. Go Bears. Go Falcons.
Oh, yeah.
Right, thank you, Matt.
Well, what a pleasure, Danny, always to have Matt on. Just a great guest, SEC guy. We got to see quite a few of those guys while we were down in Mobile. And, Danny, I'm excited, man, because we are about to kick off this new segment right here on Draft on Tap, Your Idea, Scouts Corner. Yeah, and Danny, kicking off Scouts Corner, man, you've got to be excited with this. Why don't you go ahead and tell us who the first player is that you're going to be talking about this week.
Yeah, again, just taking the our followers, our listeners, who they want me to go ahead and break down, do a scouting report on here in Scouts Corner, and one of the guys that I got a lot of was Josh Uche from Michigan. So Uche for me is a kid that I think on the team on Michigan's team was a little bit overlooked. He went down to the Senior Bowl and Ryan, as you saw, really had a terrific game.
Oh my gosh,
him and Bradley and I were consistently in the backfield, rushing the passer, getting back there, making plays. And when you look at his tape, all right, Uche comes in, his size is going to be his detriment, right? He's about 6'1", 241 pounds, but he's got those 33-inch arms, a little bit more than a little bit longer than that, but he's got solid size. He's an athletic off the ball linebacker who plays with good knee bend, balance. And again, he's athletic on his feet. This kid looks the part. Talk about the athletic frame, and then that good arm length. For me, he's an off-the-ball linebacker who flashes as a pass rusher. Okay, he possesses that lateral agility, to be able to sidestep bodies at the line of scrimmage, change directions quickly, and avoid blockers in space. In terms of getting in there and getting after the quarterback, he's got a quick first step. He's consistently one of the first guys off the line of scrimmage at the snap of the ball. I like the way he flashes pop in his punch. This is a guy's got some strong hands. He can rock offensive linemen backward with that punch of his. And he also demonstrates some of that strength in his hands by controlling and ripping past tight ends who try to block him one-on-one. In terms of play strength, does a nice job in his pass rush to be able to convert some speed into power. Can roll his hips back and again walk some of those tackles back into the backfield. So he provides that ability as well. As a pass rusher. And in terms of when he's out in the open field, Michigan kind of used him. I was watching him. I was kind of went back to the days when I was watching Leonard Floyd play at Georgia. Obviously Floyd's taller, a little bit more athletic than Uche, but again, this is a kid that was used similar to the way Floyd was used, meaning that he was, rushed off the edge. He was lined up at middle linebacker. He was in the middle of the field, and so then he's a guy that showed when he was lined up in the middle of the field, the ability to quickly process, locate the football, and then just, attacking downfield, closing quickly to be able to wrap up ball carriers. So, I think that right there shows that, if a team like the Bears don't get him and put him at an outside, as an outside linebacker to 3-4 to rush the passer, he can also probably be used in a traditional 4-3, probably as a Sam linebacker, or a guy lines up on the strong side, a guy who can cover backs out of the backfield. Uche can, and he's got the ability to carry those tight ends up the seam. So definitely he's a guy that showed that athletic ability to fold into coverage. He brings that type of versatility. And in terms of competitiveness. Terrific game day competitor. He brings energy to the field, and this guy was a defensive tempo setter when I watched him play at Michigan. So a lot of good things that I like about Josh Uche. Some of the things that may knock him down. The kid really only had 1 year as a starter. He played in 39 games in Michigan, but only had 9 starts. This past year was his only true season where he was considered the starter on defense, and he led the team with 11.5 tackles for loss, 8.5 sacks. Where he to me gets downgraded a little bit. Obviously, we talked about that size, especially at a position like pass rusher at 6'1". So if you line him up there on a down and down out basis. His play strength and his ability at the point of attack could be questioned there. He could be a liability as a run defender. There's a lot of times I was watching a game against Iowa, and Tristan Wirfs, who by all means is a first round NFL tackle, pancaked them like 3 or 4 times in just one game. So his ability to maintain his ground, take on blockers, especially those big guys at the point of attack is lacking. So, does he have some room on his frame to add a couple more pounds in terms of muscle, be able to, to offset that? He might, but I think he's more of a guy that's better off and is better utilized in space. And I think that's why Michigan had him, lined up off the ball a lot of times. So that's where I see him and I project him at the next level. The 1 year starter again is something that's going to be looked at. And again, what position are you looking at? If you're the Bears specifically, the way I see him as a situational pass rusher, a guy I'd line up opposite of guys like Khalil Mack and Leonard Floyd, and just let him go after the quarterback. Until he gets to the ability where he proves that he can set a hard edge and be a reliable run defender, I think that's where he's going to be. If you're looking at him in a 3-4 system, again, if you go to a more traditional 4-3. You could probably line him up as a strong side linebacker, and he can probably have an ability to eventually become a starter out there. So, is he a perfect fit for the Bears? I don't think he's a perfect fit for the Bears, but I certainly could see him being utilized in a way where he's productive, and they take advantage of that first step quickness and his ability to get after the quarterback.
Yeah, Danny, where do you see him falling in this draft?
Again, it's hard because, like I said, the 1-year starter, size,
right?
How does he project? Right now, he's in that day 3 category.
Okay,
so we're talking anywhere between probably 4th, 5th round range, if I had to guess. Is where I see him. And again, predominantly because of the lack of size and strength at the point of attack. That can you project him as a starter full time? However, I could see him developing into a starter. Like I said, in a 4-3, I got a strong side linebacker position as well. So
sure.
But again, he's a kid that gives you effort, competitor. He's tough, and like I said, he'll provide something that all teams are looking for, and a guy that can bring that first step quickness, that speed off the edge, and can be disruptive into the opponent's backfield.
And the next player in Scout's Corner from you, Mr. Danny Shimon, is...
I got Temple offensive lineman, center/guard, Matt Hennesy. So Hennesy is a kid that down in Mobile, I've heard the name. I hadn't really dug into his tape. And when I started watching practices, I'm like, man, who's this number 58 playing center? And I look at it, and it's Hennesy. And this is a kid, when you go back and dive into his past, he's a guy who made his first career start, collegiate start at left guard. So he's got the ability to play the interior positions, guard and center. What I like about him is obviously the size. He's got 6'4", 302 pounds. He's got a solid build. He's that versatile offensive lineman like we talked about, who can carry his weight well. He's well proportioned in terms of weight distribution. He's not really bulky on top or got a big belly or fat or anything like that. He's just well proportioned athlete, especially for an interior offensive lineman. Plays with good balance, agility, and lateral quickness. He's an efficient mover. What that means is, like, when he gets out to the second level, he's quick and he gets out in front and he finds his run fit at the next level, and he gets to that linebacker or the defender, and he seals him off or he sustains his block at the next level, which I like that a lot. A lot of times you see him getting out in front in terms of being a lead blocker on screen plays, and you see him 6-7 yards downfield blocking for his running back or receiver or whatnot, whoever has the ball. So you like that athletic ability. You like the way he just basically gets out of his stance and explodes down to the next level. Strong finisher with good leg drive. So this is a guy that will continue moving his guy and continue getting that movement, that positive yardage, if you will. So he's a guy that plays to the whistle, which I like in my offensive lineman. He's a strong run blocker, especially on those zone blocks where he uses his athletic ability, to flow nicely laterally. I tweeted out a tape or a clip, I should say, where he was at the goal line and he literally, pinned his guy on his inside left shoulder and just kind of like walked with him, as a play flow to his right, just pinned him to his inside shoulder and created that little seam, the little crease for the running back to scoot into the end zone. So, athletic type centers or interior linemen like that are key nowadays, are what NFL teams are looking for. Let's see. He projects for me, like I said, either as a center or a guard. He possesses that foot quickness, that run blocking grit to emerge as an eventual starter. Most ideally, I see him probably in a zone blocking scheme. He's not a pure, road grader. He's not a guy that's going to be able to, consistently down in, down on, just, lay into guys and get that positive, get them moving backwards, every single time. But he's a guy that's got that athletic ability, the lateral quickness, and some power to be able to probably do well in like a zone blocking scheme.
Yeah, here's my question with Hennesy, Danny. Looking specifically to the Bears, and you think of the disaster that was moving Whitehair and Daniels and how they had to end up switching them back. Let's say the Bears do snag Hennesy. Do you see them working with him as a center or a guard?
Well, that's a good question. I think James Daniel, I was very high on Daniels when coming out of Iowa. I think he still has a very bright future at center. So I think if you're going to do this, or you're going to make this move, Whitehair has played or did play in college, I think, every single position on the offensive line. So he has some experience at right guard. So if you do make that switch, now again, you're moving Whitehair over to right guard. Do you want to do that? He's been successful at both center and left guard. You just put him back at left guard, put Daniels at center, and potentially put a kid like Hennesy at right guard. That might be something. I don't know if Hennesy has the power that I think they're looking for in terms of at right guard. So that might be more of a stretch. I think if you're going to be looking at him in a zone block, in a predominantly zone blocking scheme, he could probably play left guard or center for you. Putting him in a system where you ask him to do more power. Might be a little bit too much for him. Again, he's got like I said, a nice frame, so he could add some nice, muscle, some more play strength to be able to, compete at right guard, certainly. So I wouldn't put it past him. So, but again, we're talking about, a kid that's probably going to go in that second or third round range if I had to predict, and I'm pretty bad at predicting this because like Matt Lowe said, no one knows what's going to happen in the draft, right? Guys, you're thinking going in the first round, going in the second round, and vice versa. So, but for me right now, my grades with Hennesy, he definitely got a bump up. I think he's a more lock for that third round. Could he slip into the second round? Who knows? We'll see. But besides the point, I think that he might be someone that if the Bears had a third or fourth round pick, you could probably look at and target. But I like his versatility. So even if you bring him in, if you're the Bears, you bring him in. And say you want to play him at center and probably back up at both positions, he's got that ability to do that for you. And to have guys that can play in multiple positions, especially on the interior line, is a key component to have because you can only address so many players, and you take guys like Whitehair and a kid like Hennesy that could probably play multiple positions for you. That saves you a roster spot on game day.
And then so I have this question as well related to him, Danny, and that question is, now you say you see him third round. Could the combine be a benefit for him if he was invited? Because I'm not sure if I saw his name.
I haven't gone through that list yet.
I have, yeah.
He definitely,
I forget.
Definitely could. I mean, again, the Senior Bowl was just a first step, right? He got his name out there, if you will, for those who hadn't seen him before. He's got people like me going back and digging into some of his tapes now. Now, if he goes to the combine and shows off some of that athletic ability that he displays on tape, maybe he's gone stronger. Maybe he's in a weightlifting program and he benches or reps, even though that doesn't always translate onto the field in terms of how much you can bench. And at the combine, but to show some added strength, show the ability to probably play, it creates a more positive, yardage or positive movement at the point of attack. Sorry, he could probably definitely help himself out there as well. So the league is always looking for big, athletic offensive linemen, and Hennesy falls within that territory for me.
Yeah, without question. I totally agree with you 100%, Danny. And what a great way to kick off this new segment, Scouts Corner, with our man, Bears Barroom draft analyst, Danny Shimon. And what a great way to have a fantastic show on a Thursday night. A great show, premiering Scouts Corner and talking with Matt Lowe from Lindys Sports magazine, lindysports.com, about not only the SEC, but a little bit of the draft as well. And thank you to everyone who listened live and joined us in the Mixlr chat. We hope you enjoyed this week's show. If you can't join us live, you can find the podcast version of Draft on Tap shortly after the live show on all your favorite podcast streams. Thank you to everyone at Bears Barroom who continues to make the network as spectacular as it is. Join us next week as we will have a special interview that I am not going to tell you who it is just yet, but we've got somebody special joining us, so you're going to want to tune in next week to Draft on Tap. Good night, everybody.